Hello, do you like New Japan Pro Wrestling? Are you a Shin Nihon freak? If so, check out the Super J-Cast with Joel and Damon on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network.
And even if you fucking hate New Japan Pro Wrestling, listen to the Super J-Cast anyway. Not just for our great show reviews, analysis, and pastrami sandwiches, but there's also usually some dick jokes somewhere in the obligatory opening 30 minutes of absolute nonsense we chat about every single week. That's the Super J-Cast for all the best talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling, crisps, and pornography.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Hey there, Thunder Buddies and Travelers down Thunder Road. It's us, Days of Thunder, the WCW Thunder rewatch podcast that you didn't ask for, but we did anyway. Coming to you as part of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network and powered by alargemanappears.com. I'm your host, your bro on Thunder Road, Dave Ryan, and I'm joined as I am every week by my faithful co-host, Stagger Lee Malone. Lee, how are you?
I'm good. I am very, very warm. It's very warm here in Ireland. We say this every summer.
I know
it's
there's
a talking point.
A lot of weather chat fans follow the podcast. They love when the dads hop on to talk about a bit of weather before they talk about a bit of thunder.
I tell you, we could use a bit of fucking thunder to clear that fucking the heat.
Yeah,
full day.
So yeah, I was telling you off the air that I was at a gig today for work that was in what felt like a fucking furnace, which was already making me feel ill. And then a band got up, and they're teenagers in this band, and said, "Okay, we're going to play a couple of songs that are really old ones, and they're from one of my dad's favorite bands," and then proceeded to play the Libertines.
I mean, going to a battle of the bands involving like fucking preteens, Dave. That's
not preteens, teenagers.
Oh, we can't be that old.
These are the situations I end up in with my line of work. Is that I'm kind of like Clockwork Orange style, forced to experience things that make me feel 1,000 years old. Because then they proceeded to, so like Libertines, I'm feeling very old, but at least I'm going, right, okay, I was like middle of secondary school maybe when the Libertines were at their peak, so like I'm close enough to being an adult. And then they hit me with the second whammy of being like, oh, here's another old one, and they played Chelsea Dagger by the Fratellis. Which, like, I literally remember I was already going to festivals for a couple of years when Chelsea Dagger came out.
When that hit, yeah. That was actually my alarm clock for like 4 years.
I only found out the Fratellis were a Scottish band when I saw them live, and during a song, the singer got pelted with something by the crowd and hopped on the microphone and said in the gruffest Scottish accent possible, "Fucking cunt!" Which is great. It's hard
Brilliant.
to explain to the young people nowadays how we grew up in the prime era of like people bottling bands when they didn't like what was going on, and that's why we can't have bottle caps at concerts anymore.
I can only imagine the outrage if a band were to be bottled in 2024.
And like, don't get us wrong, people were outraged at the time.
Oh, no,
it was a thing that happened a lot.
Yeah.
But it would be at a different level now. Like, there was a very famous, as early as viral goes, viral clip of Brandon Urie from Panic at the Disco getting absolutely floored with a bottle to the head, and I think it was the Reading Festival. circa 2006. It was like one of the early YouTube links I was ever sent.
Wasn't it a thing for years that like bands wouldn't support Metallica and Ozzy, I think it was, that like just couldn't get support bands because the fans were constantly just fucking bottling them and throwing all sorts of other less than agreeable stuff at them.
Yeah. I think there was God, I like there was a lot of that going on. I know like the metal scene was particularly like cutthroat in terms of like certain bands creating atmospheres whereby support bands would like borderline get killed by a mob, and creating situations like you described. It's funny. Like I remember going to see I think it was, and I like them, but I went to see one year there was a festival that used to happen near where I lived called Oxygen that was very popular. That maybe because you're a couple of years older than me, you'd remember as well as Witness. But at Oxygen one year, I went to see Bowling for Soup, who like they were like they were perfect like mid-afternoon at a festival type band to get people dancing and up and about, and everybody was really enjoying them. Until they covered Paranoid by Black Sabbath, now nothing was thrown at them, but things were getting thrown in the air and boos were happening.
Yeah. And
then the other memory I have of a crowd turning was at the very first festival I went to. There was a band that was popular here for like a minute called Hard-Fi.
Oh yeah, I remember them.
In the UK now. I remember them. They were on the Lifestyle Sports ad quite famously at the time. So they were playing and they covered Seven Nation Army, which is, you know, now it's even more famous because like every sporting event in the world you can't fucking escape it, by the White Stripes, who are my favorite band ever. And as soon as they started playing Seven Nation Army, the crowd started throwing shit at them, and then the band that were on next to them were Arctic Monkeys, who were really young at the time. They were on their first album tour. And when they came on stage in the middle of their first song, they stopped dead. And Alex Turner says, "You know what I think? Hardfire pussies." And then started playing again. I was like, Jesus. Fucking hell.
Sounds like a very Alex Turner thing to say, to be honest.
Yeah. But yeah, that's tales of me at music festivals anyway, done for 1 week. Another appear behind the curtain here, Lee, is that we are recording this because currently, as people are listening to this, you are off sunning yourself somewhere.
Depending on when this drops, I might be back, but who knows? Yeah.
Are you a tropical cocktail on holiday kind of guy?
No.
Or what's your relaxation method on holidays? What's your peak of relaxation?
Well, you know, apart from, you know, leaving the kids behind, which isn't going to happen, peak relaxation is just like, I'm not a big drinker these days, so
yeah,
you know, my wife has never been a big drinker, so we're not big for going out for a nice evening meal. That's my idea of relaxation. Whether that happens this time with a very temperamental 2-year-old, it's hard to say, but no, I think the holiday itself is just being a nice bit of relaxation. I do like, of an afternoon, occasionally having a nice local beer.
Yeah.
On my own, if I can get away.
I feel partly to blame for your semi-retirement from drinking, because there was one stage on the podcast, particularly during lockdown, where we were drinking so frequently to get through shows that we kind of just had to retire the bit.
Well, it was also lockdown, so...
Yeah, long-term listeners will remember that shortly before lockdown, because that's how long this podcast has been going, it was like shortly before lockdown. Or was it a whole year we were in before we did lockdown? I can't remember. What is time? In lockdown, we had been doing this thing really early doors where we do like a beer of the week kind of thing. Where we were drinking a different thing every week, or we were drinking a different spirit every week. And then we didn't have the forethought to realize when we went into lockdown and decided for, I think the first like few months, we turned to a weekly show. because we were doing nothing and people wanted more of the show to kind of get through the end of the world. We didn't think about combining binge drinking with doing twice as many shows, and
Yes.
the effect it had on our budget and livers was not ideal. I was like, I didn't. There was multiple times where we'd get off a recording at like 11:30 midnight, steaming fucking drunk by ourselves in our houses.
And I should add, I was still working.
Yeah.
Unlike a lot of the world's
population.
population, I still had to go to work at crack of dawn.
Yeah. At least I was like grounded at home for like 14 months.
Yeah.
I could kind of like I could eke through a hangover when I was answering emails the following day.
Good times, fucking hell. But yeah, now
Good times, bad times.
Yeah, now it's if I sneak off for an afternoon beer on my own, or maybe I'll bring Connor if he agrees not to talk too much. That'll be I'll sneak off and watch a game or something. That'll be the extent of my relaxation on holidays this time.
Now, Lee, I want to, as we turn towards talking about Thunder this week, put something in the heads of you and the listeners that I heard. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into the episode because we will not be topical or with it by the time this episode comes out. But as we are recording this, I had just earlier today watched the third episode of Who Killed WCW, which by now we will have talked about behind the paywall on our drafts episode last week. And something that I want everybody to be aware of, because it's the Vince Russo episode, is that Vince Russo assures us that we need to keep a close eye on his first 3 months because things noticeably get better. So he's kind of like, now all the excuses, the typical Vince Russo excuses, start coming in pretty quickly. But he's fairly unqualified in saying that he believes the first 3 months are his vision.
Okay.
Now, I gotta say, we'll talk a lot about it, but there is a lot of his vision coming through loud and clear 3 weeks in.
Yes.
And we'll have some things to say about it. But I suppose it's this is your kind of our welfare check of you, Lee, 3 weeks in to the Russo era, and now settled back into a rhythm of Thunder. How are you coping with things?
I think 3 weeks in, it's definitely different than what came before it.
Yes,
it's not necessarily woeful, but that's not to say it's good either, because there's a lot of stuff that it's a lot of stuff for the sake of stuff, and he has, like, I think 3 weeks in, we can very clearly say who his favourites are. So there's been a real shift in who the focus on all of the shows have been. And it's like, if Vince Russo's thing is he wants us to concentrate on the first 3 months of his reign, so let's do that. And I think 3 weeks in, it's fair to say that he's been fine. It's been like an even par beginning to the round, shall we say.
Yeah. What I'm finding about it is that I'm starting to approach more comfortable territory for me, because now we're entering shows I have vivid memories of segments or angles in, so there's much less surprise for me now, which means I'm kind of guarded against I know what's coming kind of thing. Additionally, I think because the shows are so frantic, we talked about, was it like 50 to 53 segments on those last 2 Nitros that we did. I think in terms of keeping me busy during the show, it's very hard now for me to do the thing that was a real struggle during the Nash era, which was just zoning out completely and having to rewatch segments. The only things now I would say that are challenging for me in terms of the practicalities of making the show is that one of Vince Russo's kind of like notable traits is that he does a lot of segments which are the camera catching guys having an offhanded conversation backstage. and the volume on those is quite low, and the sound mixing on the Superstation was quite bad. So there are chunks of conversations I either miss or need to replay, and that is the main remaining frustration for me in terms of just like putting together the show.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, again, 3 weeks in, I think it's fair to say that we have seen a real reduction in the importance of in-ring wrestling.
Yeah,
that's been that's been my main takeaway. Like, there's like throughout the Nash run and even the Sullivan run before that, you would get Thunders that were wrestling heavy.
Yeah,
and I think
remember
those
we had,
days
like,
are gone.
Yeah, we would note how often there would be a Thunder that was just like match. And even if they weren't like great shows, it was still, like you said, wrestling focused. And I mean, if you want to try and draw positive from some of those shows that still managed to be bad by having a lot of bad matches on them, you could say, well, at least guys were getting reps in like 10 plus minute matches, even if we didn't like watching them. It served a purpose. But yeah, now you've hit the nail on the head that it's sugar rush wrestling.
I think the prime example from this episode would be Silver King, Lash LaRue. Whereas Silver King, we've seen multiple times have like 8-10 minute matches. I mean, they have like a 3-minute matcher.
Yeah. If I'm right in my notes, there was one match that went over 5 minutes, and it was a terrible battle royal.
Yes.
Like, because I don't want people to get excited and go, oh, they're going to review a great Russo Nitro. This show wasn't good.
You mean Thunder?
Sorry, yes, Thunder. Sorry, we're so used to Nitro now. At this point.
No, this show was not good.
Yeah. It like, and not in a kind of like, I want to stop watching this altogether, but just like, that was like an hour and a half I'm never getting back.
And I think that's the thing with these Russo shows, and I think it's one aspect I'm going to enjoy. I don't know if I'll enjoy it. I don't know if that's the correct term. That I won't hate is that because so much happens, you are never bored. Yeah. So the show,
certainly as a note taker, you couldn't call what I was bored. Tired.
It's like we've had dreary Thunders, like really dreary Thunders, where you're just like, this is just bad and boring and I don't care. Whereas nothing lasts any amount of time for you to really hate it. So unless it's like racist or sexist or any multiple of the ists that Vince Russo will bring to television, and he will. Oh yes, he will. But yeah, no. So that's kind of my main takeaway. 3 weeks in.
Let's take us into the Observer, and I never saw this, but the headline, obviously because it's still 1999, is a TV documentary special on the life and death of Owen Hart.
Oh, okay.
Actually, it has a lot.
Actually, sorry to cut you off. The one topical thing I will say, because you just mentioned his name, is the collision that's now 2 weeks old as people are listening to this.
It's topical for us.
Yes, Jeff. Like, I don't care whatever happens in tournaments is fine. But Jeff Jarrett's sit down, I think it's like 9.5 minutes long.
Yeah, the uncut version. Now, the minute and a half that they showed on Collision is pretty good.
Okay, but the 9-minute uncut version is fucking phenomenal.
It's one of the best promos of the year, like genuinely.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's even like I'd struggle to think, like, because you could say some people absolutely raved about the MJF return promo. I think it needed a bit of an editing scissors. Like, if you shaved about 20% off it, it would have been much better. But like, actually, the main one I can think of is that Dustin Rhodes cut a similar fucking old man with something left to prove promo, and like Sting cut a couple of great promos on the wind up to Revolution. This is what I was saying to you, is like, one thing that AEW seem to be consistent at a time where I have plenty to give out about their booking, is they're really good at doing old dude on the wind down still has a sting in the tail. Is like a one story no matter how many times they hit. And maybe it's because of our sensibilities.
And and maybe it's people from our generation, and that's why it resonates so much with us. But yeah, like you say, AEW does that kind of old dog with one more run in them. Isn't ready to be put down yet. They do it better than anybody else has.
Yeah, except with Ric Flair. But then they're not putting him towards a match or anything like that. Thank fuck. But anyway, this Owen Hart documentary sounds like it's really interesting. In terms of, like, Dave calls it a real tearjerker because there's a lot of like home video footage with Oj and Athena. So I just want to read 2 paragraphs that talk about like the kind of most poignant parts of the documentary, which I think are really interesting. The most powerful part of the movie is the fact that producers Paul J and Sally Blake, who also produced Wrestling with Shadows, made the point to bring out that this was a real person with a real family who just happened to be a pro wrestler. This portrayal of Hart in all the family home movies made it impossible to dismiss the repercussions of it, even though it's a business that has built up thick calluses because of deaths that happen with such frequency. Perhaps the most powerful scene was from Martha Hart talking about why she invited Vince McMahon to the funeral, saying, "I wanted him to realize you guys are so desensitized from all that garbage you put in your show, you don't even realize the degree of pain that's being caused here. And I want to show you, Owen, in the coffin, that he was really gone and he was really taken from me. And this is what really happened. This is reality."
Jesus.
Like, this is a woman who had lost this man this year. And she was able to get on camera and talk about this stuff. Like, people in that situation, I can't fathom the strength that it takes to like just get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, no, I
you know what I mean?
Like, I can't imagine like a world in which I wouldn't have my wife with me, like just here one day and then gone. Like it's and particularly the nature of it as well. Do you know what I mean? There's no sense of like he was sick and we knew and we prepared. Not that it's ever easy, but like the nature of it and the and knowing he wasn't comfortable, like what we know about it, and like just the nature of the business, and like the business really chewed and spat out the hearts. Like, I don't know about you, Dave, but what I've learned from my WWE documentary history is that Vince McMahon was comfortable with doing it, so everybody else should have been.
Yeah. God,
like fuck
the less
off.
said about that scumbag, the better, hey. But yeah, I know. I just thought that was an interesting thing to bring in. I've never really watched that, and like it sounds like really poignant, but also such a bummer that I had that mixed emotion of like, oh, I'd really like to watch that, but also I never want to see that because it would really bum me out. Like, moving on to slightly more interesting fare. First time we've ever mentioned it on this show, because why else would we? Rings.
Okay.
The first preliminary round of the 32-man Rings World Mega Battle Open Tournament King of Kings at the Tokyo Yoyogi Gym ended with 4 men advancing to the finals. I just wanted to name some names in this because, like, this is a throwback. If you're an MMA fan from, like, late 90s through late 2000s, there's a couple of names in here that popped me. So the people that got through, Renato Babalu.
Okay.
Babalu Sobral, who, famously fired from the UFC for holding a choke way too long, like a fucking arsehole.
Yeah.
Antonio Nogueira.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And then, like, just...
Antonio was Big Nog, wasn't he?
Huh?
Antonio was Big Nog, yes.
And then, just kind of mentioned as the third person here, former US Olympic Greco-Roman wrestler Dirty Dan Henderson.
Oh.
Love Dirty Dan Henderson. But it's just cool, like, seeing I think it's something that I want to revisit on and off without, like, too much detail in it. Because as somebody who, like, got super into UFC for, like, a little bit... We talked about it a little bit on the show here. Like, from the early Ultimate Fighter series up until maybe around the time that fucking scumbag McGregor started getting big, I was, like, super into MMA. I'm still. There is somebody, I can't remember who. Somebody on our Discord has threatened to. I say threatened. It's a really nice threat to pay to get us to cover one of the Pride Grand Prix.
Yes, that's right.
I would fucking love that. So yeah. Like as a big fan, I think it'll be interesting to dip in and out as Dave covers MMA more.
Yes,
and as we see wrestling reach its peak and then collapse, as we're getting to not the peak of MMA, but like there is a little peak before the kind of like the fabled Ultimate Fighter Series 1 finale boom starting.
I'm trying to think. I don't think on this show we'll get that peak. Like I think there's like a peak around 2002.
The Ultimate Fighter.
Oh no, the Ultimate Fighter is like 2005, isn't it?
2005, 2006, I think.
Yeah, but like I know there was like a little peak around 2002, 2003.
Yes, yeah.
And
so but we're going to see Pride reach a particular like.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. 2005 was the Ultimate Fighter one.
Yeah, because
started in January 2005.
There was a minute where Tito and Chuck Liddell were getting there, but then they never quite did. And I think wasn't the first Ultimate Fighter, wasn't that the Tito and Ken Shamrock? Wasn't that the whole premise of them being the?
No, it was Chuck and Randy.
Chuck and Randy. Okay, that's what it was. Yes.
Yeah. Because they were doing that. That was the first, like, again, you want to talk about somebody that had peaks and valleys. Like, that was the first time that people thought, like, Couture is about to be washed. We better.
Oh yeah, he was dropping down to light heavyweight. He was about to be washed.
We better get the most out of him while he still can go.
Yeah,
which is very funny. Anyway, we'll move on from that one. I just wanted to go. Rings. There's a name that throws me back. God, what have we got next? Oh, you want a Vader update, Lee? Because I know you love Vader.
I always love Vader,
Yeah. So, in a semi-shoot angle after Vader captured his second Triple Crown World Championship in All Japan on 10/30 at the company's 27th anniversary show at Budokan, the foreign wrestlers in the company began a push to get Vader elected as Pro Wrestling MVP. Vader this past year won the Triple Crown twice along with the Champions Carnival tournament. Like, this is the thing. People think when he vanished from WWF that was kind of it for Vader. There's a lot of people with that American-centric view of wrestling. Like, this guy went back to Japan and he remained a god over there.
He had another monster run.
Yeah. He headlined before the biggest crowd in the history of All Japan this year. The official Japanese media pro wrestling awards are highly political and structured. A foreign wrestler cannot win the MVP award, much like a junior heavyweight wrestler can't, nor can a junior heavyweight match, no matter how good, win Match of the Year award. I'd be interesting to check that and see how long, if that's still the case to this day. Anyway.
I think Omega won MVP, so I'm pretty sure.
I feel like that he was the one that broke that duck. Vader was the MVP of Japan this year because his joining the company, providing Misawa and Kobashi with a new main event opponent, was the biggest thing of the year and kept the company from falling even farther at the box office, particularly after the death of Shohei Baba and the fact that Toshiaki Kawada missed most of the year with injuries. Because that's another thing as well, like that Kawada missed a lot of fucking time. And Vader coming back was a perfect moment to help. Yeah, I thought that was cool. There was a moment before the match where Motoko Baba, holding a photo of her husband along with Stan Hansen, Akira Taue and Misawa, came to ringside for a ceremony honouring the company's anniversary and Baba, who started what was one of the most successful pro wrestling companies in history back in 1972. At this point, they announced the teams for the annual World Tag League Tournament, the traditional highlight tour of the year, which opens on 11/13 and with finals on 12/3. Would you like to hear some of the teams?
Absolutely. I love some of these real World Tag League teams. There's always some doozies.
So, Kenta Kobashi and Jun Akiyama. They would be favoured to repeat, they having won last year. The other teams will be Misawa and Yoshinari Ogawa. Takayama and Omori.
Okay.
Taemin Honda and Masao Inoue. Taue and Hansen.
Okay.
Johnny Ace and Bart Gunn.
Oh, Jesus Christ, okay.
Vader and Johnny Smith.
Yeah.
And Gary Albright and Wolf Hawkfield.
That's a real collection of guys.
Just a collection of meat.
Yeah.
I've also got your, what I hope will be regular now that he's started appearing on the show, your Lance Storm boring bastard update.
Let's go.
Because Lance Storm was on Wrestling Observer Live this week. And it's funny considering like we have the benefit of seeing forward a few months. He said he doesn't have a signed contract with ECW right now, but he has an unsigned agreement that he considers valid. He's not looking to go anywhere, but if a huge offer came his way, which he wasn't expecting, he'd be foolish to turn it down. This is the boring bastard update. And I know, in terms of health and safety, it's like that, but I just figure what a nerd the boys must have thought Lance was back in the day, because he said on Wrestling Observer Live, he's one of the few wrestlers who said if he was in charge of a company, he'd institute legitimately enforced drug testing. This is a man currently in the ECW locker room. I'd say he was fucking popular at TV. Like, he's right.
That Jim Fullington just returned to.
Yeah. Like,
Raven just turned up like 2 months ago.
Yeah. We have this phrase in Ireland that the ECW guys would have, maybe if they were being polite, used for him, and that's dry shite.
Yeah.
Just like, and look, again, he's right. They should have. A lot of people would not have died if there was legitimate drug testing policies. But like, you kind of like, it's kind of half foolish, half very brave in 1999 to be on a live, nationally syndicated radio show going, yeah, I fucking think drugs should be taken out of wrestling. He was vocal on the drug issue, as he was in a letter in The Observer a few months back, saying he was pissed off at us for saying as long as you have a physical side of pro wrestling, you have to accept some painkiller use. He said from day one in the business, the veterans told him you couldn't do pro wrestling without steroids and painkillers, and he said he's been everywhere from Japan to Germany, wrestling 60 straight nights to ECW, and still hasn't needed painkillers to continue and has never used steroids, and that acceptance of the use of them contributes to major problems with abuse of them and allows for the rationalization for using them in wrestlers' minds. Like, he is 100% on the money and years ahead of his time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is 6 years before Eddie dies.
Yes.
You know, like, if only people had listened to him back then, but like, fuck, I can't imagine that made him too popular, having that kind of a take.
No, like any locker room would have, like, he would not have been popular with that kind of opinion, especially being so outspoken with it.
And like with the stuff that's happening, because like the next thing the second to next thing I'm going to go to, an interesting one here. James Vanderberg and Johnny Swinger were backstage at the ECW arena last weekend, and there was talk of Vanderberg potentially being the new manager for Mike Awesome.
Oh. That would have been different.
Yeah. So, speaking of why people should have listened to Lance Storm back then and not probably slagged him off, although I would love to hear from, I don't know if anybody's asked Lance in an interview, like, did he get a lot of heat for being outspoken on drugs back then? I actually would like to know that. But you may remember in The Observer a couple of weeks ago, we talked about Tammy passing out backstage at an ECW taping. So, the excuse is that, and this is Dave says it's an excuse, that she accidentally drank someone's soft drink laced with GHB. As Dave says, one would think that if this was true, there would be a movement within the company to find out whose Pepsi it was, and when it is discovered that that person should be dumped for bringing something like that in, which caused someone to pass out in the dressing room in the first place. To come to that conclusion requires actually believing the first story, and then believing the business has advanced past high school when somebody gets drunk and passes out and their friends all get a laugh out of it. It also requires the ability to believe that if you or I or Tammy Sitch was thirsty, they would drink from someone else's open can of Pepsi laying on the floor. I've seen people puff their cigarette butts into open pop cans in the backlot of wrestling arenas, and anybody who's been at the ECW arena when it gets hot can envision being thirsty as hell, but I don't know if anyone can envision being thirsty enough to drink from an open can of Pepsi that you've no idea whose it is in the back of an arena filled with pro athletes, let alone pro wrestlers. like, I thought this is a funny passage because, like, the degree to which Dave is having fucking
he's having
none
none
of
of it.
this.
He knows, yeah.
This is, you said this, I think, on, was it maybe the last Thunder episode, where you were just like, people now, they see it in flashes on Twitter, but it's not as fun on Twitter. Like, Dave was so catty in The Observer back in the day. Like, you guys have no idea if you haven't read old Observers. It was so much fun.
Yeah,
If
if
best tropes.
if Dave wanted to bury somebody or didn't believe something, like at this as an example, he had no problem calling people out and calling out, like, you know, rumors and stories. He'd be like, "This is bullshit. Like, no way this happened."
Yeah. There's a reason a lot of people don't like him. There are some valid reasons, but there are a lot of reasons why people hold grudges against this guy, because he was telling it like it was a lot. My two favourite tropes in The Observer are obviously him being catty out of absolutely nowhere, and also because his word processor was so outdated, you would get to the bottom of Observers a lot of weeks, and a bunch of random words he forgot to delete were put together. And I remember back in the early days of the F4W board, people were like having fun with them, trying to piece it together like it was code.
I was just going to say, like, if that happened in 2024 with the fucking why it's sick or whatever, there'd be like fucking Reddit fucking threads about the lore of what the fucking the question mark at the end of the Observer meant this week.
Okay, do you want your WCW updates for this week? We got
I do.
WCW updates, and then we're actually going to have a debut where we hit the Observer letters section.
Oh, okay. Let's go for it.
So, in WCW, notable stuff happening here. Dr. Harvey Schiller quit his post as president of Turner Sports on 10/29 to most likely take a job with George Steinbrenner to head his proposed new sports empire built around the New York Yankees and NBA New Jersey Nets. Schiller, who was overseer of the WCW for the Turner Time Warner empire, had been rumored to leave for months for the new venture, and insiders for a long time had expected the move if MLB owners approved of Steinbrenner owning a team in the NBA, but had continually denied it. How this will affect WCW is unclear. It was Schiller's decision to dump Bischoff and go with Bill Bush, so he had a pretty major impact on wrestling this year. This could wind up being a huge story depending on who is chosen as Schiller's replacement and what their attitude about wrestling was, particularly in this era of wrestling when content is based on how far the higher-ups allow the content to go. I thought this was really interesting because I have a feeling, not only is this significant, because Dr. Harvey Schiller is somebody that if you follow the insides of the business, up until this time, he's a major player, as we just outlined at Turner. But I have a feeling that if Dr. Harvey Schiller doesn't quit, if he's still at Turner, I don't think in January of 2000 Brad Siegel is being allowed run back to Eric Bischoff. Yeah,
you're probably right.
Like Brad himself, and he says it on Who Killed WCW, but like he had a personal relationship with Bischoff. Like he got on quite well with him, and I think if Schiller was the one to cut Bischoff finally, and it took a long, like again,
he got a long leash.
Listen back to the program. Listen how bad he allowed it to get and how much he allowed it to fall before the axe fell. I don't think the person who went, right, fucking get rid of him, is going to turn within 3 months and go back to that, you know? So, very interesting, that one. Okay, there was a meeting before the 1025 Nitro with Bill Bush where they talked about having major problems with the Standards and Practices Department. At the meeting, Ric Flair's name was never mentioned, nor was he buried personally, but there was tremendous heat on him for the Blade job on the pay-per-view. We've already gone through the story of what happened regarding them basically begging to do one match with Heavy Juice for storyline and trying to convince Standards and Practices they would be using fake blood rather than a blade job, although Sid did use a blade. And then the people in the department feeling double-crossed because of the second match having even heavier juice and wasn't being stopped. There was also the problem that with the match in that original finish was changed and Charles Robinson was never told, which is why he held up the count, you might recall us talking about that at the time, how weird the finish was. At 2, when it was supposed to be a pinfall in that match, plus Page and Flair booked a ref bump in that match, and so many other ref bumps were already booked on the show, and Robinson, who was beaten up by Page, was needed fresh for the Goldberg-Sting match. Anyway, at the talent-only meeting, the Nitro girls were booted out at a time where many of them are pushing for more airtime and to be involved in storylines where they'd be linked to the wrestlers. Kevin Sullivan noted that the company has given them a TV-14 rating as opposed to TV-PG and was cutting the show to 2 hours in January. There was actually the threat given, with no doubt was totally overblown, that if there are more problems with the company not following Turner standards, they would take away the TV-14 and maybe even shut the company down. Bill Bush said from this point on there would be no more referee bumps without authorization. Since so many get booked in storylines already, that there would be no more juicing or swearing on television without authorization, and that no male could grab or hit a woman unless it was within the context of a match, which is why Asia was brought back for somebody to be the one who actually kidnapped Tori, since the guys weren't allowed to put hands on her.
Ah, okay.
So that would explain, like, because Asia doesn't fit in the Revolution for me at all. But that completely explains why she's back, and she's the only one you see actually, like, get properly physical with Tori. I think this is really interesting because of how trashy we know things are about to get. And, like, is it just me, Lee, or does, like, the right hand know what the left hand is doing? Because they're saying we need to make this more family friendly, more classy, less trashy, and then you hired Vince Russo.
To me, it appears like they've cut the show back to 2 hours starting in, was it New Year's in January? Yeah. They've given them TV-14 rating, and that sounds ideal for Russo. But then you have to remember that they are on Turner Networks, and that doesn't work for them, brother. So it's very much a case of they don't know what they're doing here. It's two separate entities being brought together, and it's just a total clash of, well, we want family-friendly, good, wholesome entertainment, and we want fucking boobs and cursing and swearing and men hitting women and all that other fucking stuff Vince Russo gives you. It's a total fucking clash, and it's not going to end well. And, like, to me, it sounds like they had this meeting about standards and practice, and Vince Russo's big thing was to just push back and push back and push back. Instead of deciding to work with these people that have only literally just employed him, he's like, no, fuck you, I'm going to do it my way.
Yeah. Right, we'll move on to the readers' letters, and I thought this is interesting because there is a section in the readers' letters just entitled Russo, and I think this letter is really cool because I think, look, there's some points at which, like, this guy isn't on the money, but there's points at which I'm just like, it's pretty interesting because, again, we were talking last week about how there's a lot of people are really positive, particularly internally, about the Russo hire. That, you know, we've hired the WWF's, like, architect. And even the people who are less optimistic on it don't seem to be downright pessimistic about Russo specifically. They might be pessimistic about WCW, but we're not seeing a lot of people like, fuck, like it's all fucked now. People are thinking there is a possibility this might turn around. So, this letter. Regarding Russo's departure, I, for one, am glad he's gone. Russo took the wrestling out of the WWF and turned it into South Park with muscles. Besides, he's also responsible for the crassness of the WWF, and how will that work in Turnerland? Like, this guy is already like seeing the problems coming up ahead. Like, this is what I was impressed by. He can't go to WCW and have one of the wrestlers get blown by a transvestite, or have all the women get their tops torn off. WCW will not allow a pimp or a porn star as a gimmick. No puking wrestlers, no killing of a dog and feeding the remains to his owner, no beer drinking, bird flipping wrestlers. How is Russo going to get to take his near X-rated act to WCW, which won't even allow Norman Smiley to do the big wiggle? And for that matter, why did WCW even want him? They know what his track record is in the WWF, and they've repeatedly said they don't want to take the gutter route to compete. And that's kind of what I was saying there a couple minutes ago. It's like, why are they taking the guy that's the exact opposite of the direction they're saying standards and practices anyway are saying that they want from the product? I do think, like, some of this stuff they soften on, obviously, because the big wiggle is a big over gimmick for pretty much the rest of this company.
Yeah.
He does it on this show.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is actually the first Thunder where they don't zoom out on it.
Now, what I have noticed is they have started calling it the hardcore wiggle. So I wonder, is that a kind of way of dipping our toe back in it? and he's not doing it while thrusting behind anybody.
No, he's just doing it to the ear. Yeah.
He's doing it by himself.
Yeah.
So I wonder, are they trying to have their cake and eat it? Now, hopefully this means less of the garbage we've seen in the WWF. Raw has gotten progressively worse in the last few weeks to the point that I shut it off when that stupid "This Is Your Life" segment came on and never turned it back on. Which is really funny because, like, again, it's famously one of the highest rated segments in the history of Raw.
But it's not a good segment.
You watch it back,
It's
fucking awful. It's so fucking bad. And I didn't like it at the time. I remember thinking, it's like, this is like a bad comedy sketch. Like, this is... Anyway, and I was a child, and I thought this comedy wasn't good and too childish for me, you know? The only good show is Sunday Night Heat for the accompanying music and identifying the artists they play, as well as the Deja video, where the wrestlers maybe break kayfabe to discuss their match. That's new. Am I the only one that sees a serious decline coming in the WWF? The world title means nothing. Vince McMahon's win was nothing more than a gimmick to spike the rating for SmackDown and have no champion going into the unforgivable pay-per-view. I thought that was interesting because that doesn't yet become true for WWF, where the title is devalued and there's a serious dip. Like, we get another year and a half before the decline starts. But I think it's very interesting that he's talking about this, and Vince Russo basically moves over, immediately devalues the world title and puts the title on himself and David Arquette. And like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's very, he's right, but he's not at the same time. Helmsley isn't over at all since breaking away from DX. The title match on SmackDown with The Rock officiating would have been a lot more entertaining if the title wasn't on the line. I do think Triple H does get over during this period of time as a heel, but I do get that if you're comparing it to Rock and Austin, he's never that.
He's never that level.
No matter how much him and the company tell you now that he is that, he was never, ever, ever that. Just a few more points in this, because I think it is interesting just like to see somebody this critical of WWF at its absolute peak. The IC belt is even more relevant. It's held by this'll time when this was written. It's held by a misogynistic loser who needs a big boob blonde to get any heat with, and his top contender is a woman. If that isn't lame enough, he hit Jackie and the grannies as hard as Bradshaw hits the men, but at least Bradshaw is hitting the men. Which again, a burial of an all-time bad run, you know. Again, the IC title is something they would course correct over 2000. Reuniting the Outlaws was a desperation move with no build-up. The tag scene was actually pretty good until Mideon and Viscera are figured in. Who is the hardcore champion, and does anyone care? Big Show is a big flop. Chris Jericho is losing all his steam, which is very true.
Yeah, fucking, this is so on the money, like.
He hasn't had a notable clean win yet. Curtis Hughes is dragging the guy down. Yep. He's done nothing but yap on the mic, and they haven't come across as a chicken shit. They're pissing away the talent they work so hard to get. I don't think it's a matter of size. Crash Holly is smaller and has a better angle right now. Oh, because this is when they were doing the allegedly well over 400 pounds
super heavyweights.
Stuff was starting. Yeah. The WWF has more wrestlers in a holding pattern than all Japan has on its entire roster, and yet it keeps signing more talent. Their shows are a bad SNL routine with an occasional wrestling match thrown in, and heaven forbid we should ever see a clean pin. Put the world title on The Rock for 6 months and let him feud with a heel Austin and Undertaker. Tell Triple H to be patient. He seems to have the notion that he's entitled to a world title, even though his push has been a flop. How long was Bret Hart in the company before winning a world title? Here is a fucking... I'll tell you, this is a moonshot in 1999. Put the Intercontinental title on Edge.
Wow, okay.
Christian is very good, but he's just along for the ride, similar to how Marty Jannetty was with Shawn Michaels. That one he's off on, but he wouldn't. People wouldn't realize how off he was on that for years.
Oh, it'd be a long time. Yeah.
The company, he was never not the Jannetty in the company. Even when he won the world title, he was the Jannetty.
Yeah.
In WWF. Let the Dudleys, Acolytes, Outlaws, Hollies and Hardys fight for the tag title. The tag team scene has potential to be more interesting than the world title scene at this point. Send all the wrestlers stuck in a holding pattern to All Japan for a few tours. Jesus, why would you do that to All Japan? Mitsuharu okay, right. Now, this is where he starts to go off a cliff in terms of what we should do, because I would imagine the look on Mitsuharu Misawa's face when this is pitched. Mitsuharu Misawa needs help, and look how much it improved Bradshaw. Kenta Kobashi will make a good wrestler out of Shawn Stasiak and Val Venus, if anyone can. Now,
Wow.
I will say this. I would enjoy watching Kenta rough them up. Just slap the piss out of them. And they should bring in Etsuko Mika, Mima Shimoda, and Mayumi Ozaki to teach Ivory, Luna, and all the men for that matter what a hardcore match really is. Lose the women who can't even deliver a line, which is all of them. Sign Dawn Marie and Tori Wilson.
Okay.
Because that's all the women they need for eye candy and have personality as well. Which is, to be fair, we talked about Dawn Marie and how charismatic she was recently on a show. Be more careful with public appearances. I cringe watching Austin and Rock at the Emmys. I never saw that clip. Austin was only slightly better at the MTV Awards than on that Teen Awards show. When wrestlers are out of the element, they often look uncomfortable, and when they can't do their shtick, they end up looking bad. And finally, cut this monthly pay-per-view. Enough already. WCW will probably be the first, since their buy rates are almost as low as ECW. The WWF won't be the first to cut back, but they should be smart at first. 6 pay-per-views instead of 12 will allow them to stretch out angles and not burn them up in a month. This is Andy Patrizio and his crystal ball from Los Angeles, California. Dave has a brief response, and then we'll get into the show. He says, we aren't about to see a cutback in the number of pay-per-view shows. It's funny because he jumped on the pay-per-view thing instead of anything else, he said. Since the pay-per-view revenue is basically the money keeping the companies in the black, WCW is hurting, but it isn't because they're running too many shows, it's because they turned off their audience. Pay-per-view will probably go down significantly across the board in the next year, but the reason isn't because there's too many pay-per-view shows, though there are if you add all the small shows, but because there is too much free weekly television, so by Sunday, who wants to pay $30 to watch 3 hours of wrestling? Well, I got news for you, Dave. It isn't $30 anymore. Yeah. I just thought, I don't know what you thought. I thought that was a really fucking crazy set of predictions, basically, as it turns out.
Yeah, that guy was pretty on the money with a lot of stuff he said.
Yeah. Yeah, really, really good. So, this is Thunder 87, the second half of a taping from San Diego, California. 4th of November, 1999. We're creeping towards the end of this year, my friend.
I know. Mad.
The rating. The all-crucial rating. Because everyone loves talking about the ratings, buddy. It's definitely not tedious. It definitely doesn't kill my soul every time my feed is full of ratings now. But very interestingly, the rating here is a 2.4. It's gone up again.
Wow, okay.
It has gone up by 0.4 in 2 weeks. So this is an interesting one to keep track of, because we know from the Nitro book and from Death of WCW, because they focus obviously on the Nitro ratings as the big talking points, and it really is a blip, Nitro going up and then it goes in the toilet again. I would be interested to see if the exact same is mirrored by Thunder, because I don't recall. I'm sure it does eventually.
Yeah,
we know it does.
We know it
but
does.
does it stay up at this level through to when fucking Kevin Sullivan takes over for a little while? I'd be interested to find out.
I mean, we're gonna find out. So
sadly, we are going to find out. We are straight in. We are just doing cold opens left, right, and centre on Thunder these days. Scott Hudson is in for Tenay this week, who is on location, which is weird because he was in the building that night, but he obviously just wasn't free for the recording booth a week later.
I told you, I think their thing is that Tenay does the live show and Hudson does the tape show.
Yeah, we need to see if that continues to be a pattern. I thought it was really funny because Scott is like, oh, he's going to be raging because he picked a really bad week to miss, which I thought was really funny as the exact same opening match from the last 2 Nitros and 1 Thunder enter the ring. Mm-hmm. It is Evan Courageous versus Juventud Guerrera again.
Yep.
So they wrestled once, and then after that there was the Nitro match where
Bret Hart came out.
Bret Hart came out.
Yeah.
Then there was the match last week on Thunder where Sid came out. Mm-hmm. So they're saying 3rd time's a charm. It is interesting that a very strong talking point before we even have the bell ring, Lee, is the very defined powers that be.
Yes.
We are pushing that hard, and we will come back to the powers that be later. But it seems to... it seems to now be pretty settled on the powers that be.
They've settled on powers that be. There's no more mention of Russo by name. It's not the guys up north. It's the powers that be.
Yeah. Thank God for that, because like that inconsistency was kind of killing me. I do think the third time is the charm, in as much as, like, you will often get when guys do like house shows and do reps together, they do start to figure each other out a little bit. And I think of the 3 half matches we've seen so far, this was probably the most they had in terms of chemistry together. Because I think particularly of the match that Sid interrupted, in as much as they felt like they were reading entirely different scripts. But this seemed to flow okay for the couple of minutes it was on.
I think that just goes to prove the inconsistency of Hoovy, first of all, but also courageous as well. And when you have two like insanely inconsistent wrestlers like that are kind of high flyers, you do get matches where sometimes it flows perfectly, and if one of them is off or both of them are off, it can be an absolute mess. And like, you know, these two matches took place on the same night, so I think that just proves the trouble you have with guys like this.
And Courageous is getting a tiny bit more confident in the ring. He pulls out some stuff that we don't see that much from. He does like a he does like a top rope springboard moonsault. He does a big superplex for 2.5, and then unfortunately you kind of knew when they said third time's a charm that someone was going to interrupt. And this is like whatever about Brett, who was a world title contender, Sid, who was recently a world title contender, interrupting these guys. You go, well, look, these guys are top of the food chain. You can try and excuse it away. Norman Smiley.
But see, I think that's the bit. I think that's...
No, it is the bit. It's 100% the bit, but this is the one that's like the most devalued they've looked on the TV. Is like fucking even Norman Smiley's interrupting them now.
But I like it insofar as it's now become this bit that this match cannot have a finish, and also Norman Smiley thinks he's on the level of Sid and Bret Hart.
Yeah. I do think the thing that, like, I find it very hard to tune my ear to what exact accent Norman Smiley has. That, like, British, but also lots of American in there. And he does speak Spanish when he gets into the ring as well to Hoovy. Tells him tranquilo. Because obviously his time spent very famously in Mexico. He is now being described as the new king of hardcore. And like I said, this is another trope of Vince Russo, is they did the joke once and now they must beat it into the fucking ground. See what we're doing? See what we're doing? I did laugh at his promo though, because he said, when people look at me, they think he's hardcore to the bone. And then he also positioned it as, like, we all remember that what actually happened was he found himself in a hardcore match and was terrified of it, and that was the start of the screaming.
Yes.
But the way he phrases it in this promo was that he begged management to bring back the hardcore division, which is so funny. But anyway, this is a complete non-finish. He goes, this is his other great line. When you think of hardcore, you think of one man, Norman.
Yeah.
And then the bit that makes them look the worst is that they're just like, oh, fuck this, and they jump him, and he manages to dodge the two of them, and they bonk into each other and knock each other out like idiots.
And Norman just does the wiggle.
Yeah. The hardcore wiggle.
Yeah.
Revolution backstage talking about whether they'll look for new members. Dean is against the idea, but Perry and Dean say they need to always be looking. Sid is informed by Mike Graham, who has now become an on-screen regular character at this point, that his booking has been changed. So there's your first insider term for the night. Take a drink, folks, who are playing along. He says tonight he has to team, and this is like, I just threw my hands up at, like, this is just, what are we fucking doing here?
Remember when I said stuff just happens for the sake of stuff just happening?
Yeah,
this is
really
stuff
like,
just happening for the sake of stuff just happening.
Now he's teaming with Perry Saturn against Benoit and his mate Rick Steiner.
But here's the thing, we just saw the Revolution talking about adding new members,
Yeah.
but they don't tie in Sid and Perry Saturn teaming together into that
No.
story.
No. And, like, would it not make more sense? Like, the heat you get that would make him angry is that if he was teaming with Benoit, surely.
Yes.
Or if, like, Benoit was teaming with Malenko. You know, like, the guys that are actually directly feuding should be the two that are, fuck this. Fuck, like, this was just so half-assed. It was just like, who's backstage? Who's backstage? Oh, get out. Next match is Booker T with Stevie Ray versus a returning to the show, Kaz Hayashi.
Yeah.
Delighted to see Kaz.
He's been missing a couple of... Since his Cruiserweight title challenge, he's been kind of missing, hasn't he?
We get a flashback to Nitro as Jeff Jarrett is helped by creative control to distract the ref, use a guitar, and beat Booker. By the way, I love that a few weeks into Jeff Jarrett's run in the company, that in kayfabe, referees are incapable of hearing a guitar exploding off someone's head, even when they're like 3 feet away from it happening and the entire ring is covered in
I was just going to
splinters.
say, and the ring is like just covered in guitar debris.
Yeah. I thought this was fun for a couple of minutes while it lasted.
This was two good wrestlers having a good wrestling match.
Yeah, until, again, booking got in the way. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like the role of Vince Russo's booking is to apologize for wrestling. It's like, oh, don't worry, we're back to the soap opera now, guys. Sorry that you had to watch wrestling for 2 minutes.
Yeah, sorry there was 120 seconds of action, like...
Yeah, Kaz hit a really cool cannonball senton to Booker on the outside. Again, Stevie attacks Kaz behind the ref's back. Like, Harlem Heat are supposed to be baby faces.
Well,
Like,
we
and
think
now
so.
Specifically, Booker is supposed to be babyface. So you could say, right, if Booker, like Brett style, even though they're doing that gimmick already where Brett didn't see the interference at the time from the outsiders, right? You could say, right, if you're doing the thing where Booker's not seeing Stevie beat up Kaz, but like Booker literally saw him beat him up, roll him into the ring, and then took advantage of it.
Yeah.
Like, it makes no fucking sense. Apparently, we're getting an Opportunity Knox Battle Royal tonight. I thought this was really funny because they said they couldn't even say, because I guarantee they hadn't decided what the person gets if they win it.
No.
But that it will be a special opportunity. And then we'll talk about it later, but there's vague consequences being rumored for everybody else in the match, which is fucking wild. Booker hits a Uranagi where, like, Kaz takes it on his neck and shoulders. It looked sickening. Hudson then calls the Alabama Slammer a slapjack. Booker hits a missile dropkick and wins. So this was like one of the only clean finishes relatively on this show, because it wasn't directly
The result of interference by his tag partner.
yeah
Yeah.
To the back, and the Animals and Tori, who is now back, are all over Dillinger and steal his wallet. I thought this was really weird because, again, you want to talk about, like, continuity Malone. If we hadn't retired that bit, he'd have had a fucking seizure by now. Because surely what you want to portray in kayfabe is that the wrestlers are much wealthier than Doug Dillinger.
Yeah, I didn't think of it that in that aspect, but yeah, that would be one thing. But also, the Filthy Animals continue this ongoing story of, are they faces or are they heels? Because
The answer is yes. Are they faces or are they heels? Yes.
yes, because, you know, Tori was just abducted. Kidman gets probably one of the loudest reactions of anyone in the company at the moment. But they are constantly mugging and beating up people and taking their stuff.
Go figure.
So, yes, I think is the appropriate answer.
Yes, I think is the only answer. So Gene is with Rick Steiner and explains the tag match to him, but he says he knew already and that all he knows is when the smoke clears, it'll be him and his buddy Sid standing tall. Righto. Here is something that's really interesting to me, is that I have noticed a very sudden shift in WCW Saturday Night. Now, we haven't been watching it, but since the beginning of Days of Thunder, we have done our diligence to note exactly who is being promoted for Saturday night when they usually do a weekly tease. And usually what they're getting you in the door with is maybe a couple of the new guys and like which of the veterans are going to wrestle on Saturday night. Is it a thing that we can say of this era of WCW where we cut them a little bit, a tiny morsel of credit that they're going, right, Saturday night is not important now, so what we should use it for is to heavily push the guys we're going to put on Nitro and Thunder soon, give them TV reps, and make them the selling point of the show?
No, I think what happened is that Jimmy Hart was put in charge of Saturday night,
And he deserves the credit.
The talent were told, "Oh no, you don't have to turn up to Orlando anymore." So Jimmy had to go raid the power plant.
Yeah,
and in spite of a lot of these guys not being ready, they are all of a sudden on TV.
So we got something that should have happened, that was right to happen, but for the wrong reason.
I think so. Yeah, I think the talent were told you no longer have to report to Orlando.
Because even so the previous Saturday night, and this was the first time I've ever noticed they told you what happened last Saturday night, because it's weird in this era where it's before even TiVo, let alone on-demand services. So there's no way to watch this show again. But they told you that last night you missed the Brits were on it, Scotty Riggs was on it, Norman Smiley was on it, the Armstrongs, First Family. So these are usual acts we would see in these commercials a lot. This week, the names were, and it's so funny because, again, all of these guys within about 6 months are on TV. Actually, less, because New Blood is what, March?
New Blood is April.
April, yes.
April is it could be in the end of March. Yeah, it could be in the end of March.
Yeah. This week we get Mark Jindrak, Chuck Palumbo from the Jungle, says Scott Hudson, Johnny the Bull, Elix Skipper, the sensational Mike Sanders, and the yet-to-be-renamed Devon Storm. I had forgotten that he had made TV before
as Devon Storm,
Yeah. Interesting one to know, and I wonder, will that trend continue, or like you said, is it just a fucking we're not paying for guys to fly
if I
for Saturday night?
If I remember right, I think when he debuts with David Flair, it's like they call him Devon Storm, and then he just becomes David Flair's crowbar.
Okay.
I think I could be misremembering that though.
No, that does sound a bit right, because he is using the crowbar gimmick.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. Like, he becomes it's like David, imagined his crowbar to be real.
We have finally reached a landmark moment that we had talked about a while ago in WCW, which is this next match, Eddie Guerrero versus the final appearance of the Luther Biggs Buzz Stern gimmick.
Is that because they got mugged?
I know you're devastated.
Is it because they were mugged and had their clipboard taken away from them?
I mean, look, the Filthy Animals have done us a world of good here. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is the final one. I think they have a match against each other, but I don't think that's on a show we see.
Or we can
I could be wrong.
We can make sure it's on a show we don't see.
Take a week off. I feel like Eddie's promo was very promo by numbers, like a guy who knew he was in the third hour of a TV taping and just said things. We get a flashback, and Lee, it's maybe one of the last Vince Russo tropes we hadn't seen. For people who were wondering how many weeks it would be before the first pole match, the answer is 3. Because there was a key on a pole match to free Tori from a shark cage that was on a forklift.
Not the first time or last time we will see a forklift on our run.
A question I would have is that if she was a hostage this whole time, how was she able to change outfits?
I mean, the Revolution are nothing if not
accommodating kidnappers. So they took her shopping. I want that montage. Like, do you remember the Raven and Canyon shopping montage?
Yeah.
But it's like the Filthy Animals going shopping with Tori in a shark cage. So the animals start ganging up on Luther outside of the ring. Buzz goes out to help him. He himself gets jumped. Conan rolls him back in and then distracts the ref while Kidman... I don't know why they beat him up, rolled him in, then distracted the ref again when the ref was already distracted. They could have just finished beating him up outside when the ref wasn't looking. Because Kidman rolls in, hits him with a sky high, and then we get a frog splash and win. I know why, because they wanted him in position for the frog splash. But in storyline, it makes no sense. You could have just hit him with a devastating sky high on the outside and then rolled him into position.
Or Eddie could have just, gave him a scoop slam or something.
Yeah, or anything. The other thing about this is, like, the animals are kind of tweeners, but also it's kind of inescapable to think that Eddie Guerrero needed 4 men to beat Coach Buzz Stern.
You say needed.
Well, I mean, that's the implication. Because of the implication, you know yourself.
Because it's what happened. But, I mean,
yeah.
Look, you have to...
Yes, I'm implying it because it's literally what happened, Lee.
Yeah, but, I mean, you have to look at
those are the events that occurred as outlined.
You have to look at it through Vince Russo's eyes.
Yeah, I guess so. God help me. So Luther gets in, the two of them get laid out again like idiots, and both of them have their shirts robbed, and they're hopefully never seen again. Curly Bill and Bert, like, you talk about fucking we're just doing shit. Curly Bill and Berlin are being put together for no reason. They are not feuding. They are in no storyline together. They are doing... What the fuck are they doing with Berlin anyway the last few weeks? Well, they're putting him with Curly Bill, and they're getting a tag team title match tonight.
Do you think Vince Russo's problem with Berlin is that he wasn't fascist enough? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the implication was there, and everyone could see it.
Yeah. Yeah, he was doing the thing where Berlin was giving out about him being a cowboy. But one could possibly read a bit deeper into what the... Yeah, I get you. Can I also say, it's the return of me coming up with mishmash tag team names.
Oh, no.
With this tag team of Burly Bill. It's the most right there in front of us one we've had in a long time.
Or if they were an observer reader, Bill from Berlin.
That is obviously Berly, Bill. Yeah, just so everybody knows. I have written that down repeatedly in my notes in case I forgot it. Rick walks by Chris Benoit getting a coffee and says tonight's going to be a long match. The only thing I liked about this was it does remind me of maybe the only funny Benoit skit where he was doing the bit where, what can I do in the time it took me to beat Orlando Jordan? And they record him making a coffee, and that took longer than it took him to beat Orlando Jordan. That was a good bit.
Yeah.
Whoever wrote that segment deserves a bit of a nod for that one. This segment, however, awful.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, it's going to be a long match. Right, okay, Rick.
He looks at him, yeah.
Yeah, he just looks at him with the same fuck off Rick energy that I have all the time. Oh my god, right, okay, Lee, get comfortable because we get an exhaustive tournament recap. And look, again, we said last week, it's great that they are recapping the tournament,
yes,
making it emphasized. But holy shit, this week did compressing it all together in 2 minutes here show you how all over the fucking place the booking in this tournament is. Because it's just random dudes in random matches with, I'll tell you, random fucking stipulations.
You say random dudes, but that's technically not true.
Sorry, random dudes in terms of credible world championship contenders.
No, but what I mean is your usage of the word dudes is factually incorrect.
Oh, yes.
Because
actually, it is literally incorrect.
Because Medusa is somehow back in the tournament.
Yes. So, the Misfits arrive, the band Misfits arrive to help Vampiro beat Berlin. So now we are rapidly approaching Vampiro ripping off the Misfit style and resembling the Vampiro we all know. I hasten to say no and love. Certainly no. The Cat versus Lash LaRue ends as they do a bit where Cat's knee blows out and Lash submits him. Buff versus Stevie. Stevie comes out and just randomly says that the powers that be have made it a strap match. Okay. Creative Control attacks Buff in his match and he goes through via disqualification. Kurt versus Disco, which I loved because for a second you get to see Larry the Axe Hennig punching Disco Inferno in the face.
Something you could watch many, many times over.
They even showed it twice in that one video clip, and
yeah.
I loved it. Then, more of this anon, I fear. A smarmy man appears and beckons Disco away. Count out win for Kurt Hennig.
Well, that's so smarmy man, Dave.
Do you want to tell people?
This is the beginning of the Mamelukes.
Yes, it certainly is.
It's I believe it's Disco Inferno's bookie.
Yes. I will not be excited until Vito, who I had a soft spot for, shows up. We get a count out in. So then Jarrett versus Booker. We already talked about how that ended. Medusa versus Evan Courageous. He is creepy as fuck in the clips from this match, just trying to paw all over her, and she wins via mounted smooch.
Never seen Lutez do it that way.
No, I'll tell you what. He would have sold a few more tickets, I'd say.
I thought you were going to say he would have sold a few more T-shirts.
Dean versus Benoit is just in a cage. We get again, you want to talk about moments that in hindsight get even darker. The win is via diving headbutt off the cage.
This was the first time he did it from the top of the cage. I think, I could be wrong on this, he does this 2 more times before the end of the year. I know he for sure does it once more, but I think there's 2 more cage matches.
Vince Russo loves, it's redoing stip matches over and over.
Yeah,
it's very funny because there is like 8 weeks left in the year, but I would totally believe that Vince Russo not only does a cage twice more in 8 weeks, but a cage with Benoit involved, that he can't even spread the stips around.
I know for sure there is a cage match involving Benoit, Jarrett, and Jimmy Snuka.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing as well, is that you must be right, because I know there's only 8 weeks left of the year, but there's only like 10 weeks left of Benoit in this company.
I know he's gone on the. Isn't it the?
It's the second Nitro in January. So he wins the world title.
No, you're right. It's like the 7th of January when he wins the world title.
I think it's so they show up on the last Raw of January, and he wins the world title he wins the world title right at the start of January, and then a week later he's stripped because they're gone.
Yes, because they
and then there's like
they didn't turn up to the next night, and then by the following week they're gone. Yeah.
So where are we in this? Headbutt off the cage. Revolution come in after the bell, and the Animals even up. Gormless idiot David Flair kills the Animals single-handedly. Fucking brilliant work, Vince. Then we have Brett throwing down the US title he won a week ago because he was disgusted that the Outsiders helped. He confronted them backstage while he's on crutches, saying he didn't need their help. Sid, this is incredible. Sid then asks for the US title back and just gets given it by Kevin Nash after he destroys a lame Bret Hart. Then we have Sid versus Scott Hall, which we might remember from last week's Thunder was the big match that was being pushed for the tournament. Sid gets jumped by Bret, who then tries to take Hall out but fails. Hall sneaks a pin, and now he's the US champion.
Yep.
So Bret, vacated, Sid, Scott.
Yeah.
4 US champions on one show.
Mm-hmm.
And the title only changed hands via pinfall once.
Yep.
And it was a pinfall via interference.
Yep.
Welcome to the new World Championship Wrestling, everybody. I know we gave out about how they treated these titles before, but you ain't seen nothing yet.
You remember that letter you read out about the IC title being devalued?
Yeah.
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 It's only getting worse, folks. It's only getting worse.
Yeah. We get a clip of Benoit versus Sid from last week, and then we see Shane Douglas giving a pep talk to Sid. Sid says, no one asked for that match, let's just see what happened. Then we have a La Parka segment. And I thought this was interesting, considering certain things that Vince Russo's been accused of. Is that La Parka is cutting a promo in which he's clearly talking about the outsiders and other people. I don't speak Spanish, but I understand what Kevin Nash is in Spanish. It's Kevin Nash. Right? So what they do is somebody, and I can't remember if this ever pays off as being somebody or this is just a fucking thing that happens. Somebody changes. Firstly, it's a subtitled promo, which has never fucking happened in this company. A backstage interview that is subtitled, and the subtitles are completely made up. And they make him look like an idiot and say that he dresses the way he does because he's ripping off Skeletor and he's a huge nerd and a He-Man fan. And like by the power of Grayskull and all that shit. The only thing I would say that I genuinely found funny was Gene Okerlund nodding like he understood what La Parka was saying. Much like Taz would later do with people cutting promos in foreign languages. Like, Taz would always be like,
Oh, yeah. Kendo Suzuki and fucking Renee Dupree and shit,
yes. Great bit. And Gene, progenitor of that bit, I didn't realise. So, yeah, that was uniquely weird and awful, wouldn't you say?
I'm just disappointed that he didn't bring up the ungodly fear that Lex Luger feels anytime he's in an arena.
Yeah, I know, obviously. God damn it. Why? Like, of all the running bits they're beating into the ground, that's one we loved, is that he's terrified of skeletons. I'll be fuming if that never is mentioned again.
Of course,
and it won't be.
It's never going to get mentioned again. No.
And he'll probably wrestle the Parka at some stage and no one will bring it up. But anyway, speaking of uniquely weird and awful, Buff Bagwell's here. And he's wrestling La Parka. Buff now is in the strata of like guys who, when the show started, we were like, because it was before he broke his neck, we were like, God, this guy had a lot of potential. Even after the neck issues, he was still over as fuck, and people really wanted him to get to that next level. Now he's at the stage where every time I see him, I groan because I know I'm going to hate this angle or this match. Because not only is he not good in ring anymore, but he is now actively the worst thing in the company in terms of the booking and the insider shit. They do another flashback of the entire angle, I think as a rib on me. And obviously this is, and thankfully, because I would have gone even more crazy if they didn't have the continuity to point out, but they did, that La Parka is the guy he was wrestling when all this started.
Yes.
So thankfully he did. La Parka's mocking Buff and dancing in his face at the bell. Buff has a big boo-boo face on. Buff hits some arm drags and does some struts. The layout of the match, Lee, is Buff Bagwell does one move and then poses.
Well, I mean, that's the story of his career, basically.
Yeah, essentially. La Parka gets in his face and Buff snaps, but only for like 5 seconds, because it seems like it's gonna an actual wrestling match might break out. And he starts like hitting him really hard for like, again, 5 to 10 seconds, then back to posing. Blockbuster and a win. Fucking nothing.
Just totally nothing match.
Nothing. And didn't even commit to continuing the bit. Like, they showed the whole bit of him doing insider stuff, and the assumption is he's going to do something else at the end of this match. Doesn't.
Yeah, where like they couldn't have followed on from Nitro, or didn't have the forethought to know what they were doing at Nitro, to have a follow on here where he'd like, you know, refused to lay down or whatever.
Yeah. The filthy animals are backstage. Conan assures Mean Gene that the beef is not over with the Revolution. Oh goody. Scott Hudson shows us an ad that we don't see because it then cuts to the proper commercials on Turner for a little game called Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. Mm-hmm. And that gave me the warm fuzzies. Lee, were you a Tony Hawk's Pro Skater guy?
Yeah. Great game. When the double pack was re-released last year, I think, wasn't it?
A couple of years ago.
I know you got it.
Yeah.
I unfortunately didn't, and it's one of those I will eventually get on the PS5. It's just I haven't played a fucking game in I don't know how long.
Do you have do you have a disc like
no?
A disc based, you don't.
Digital download.
Because I was gonna say you could probably pick it up. Oh yeah, because it came out during lockdown.
Yeah. Oh, was it lockdown? Was it that long ago? Fuck.
Yeah. September 4th, 2020.
Holy shit.
That's really a 4-year-old game. I'd say you could probably get that pretty good on Steam. It's only $40 at the moment, so that's not bad for like two of the greatest games of all time.
But yeah, no, big proponent of Tony Hawk's Underground or Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
One of my favorite tweets of all time that I've mentioned several times on Link to the Cast. Sorry for listeners of that are going to hear me say this again, but one of my favorite tweets of all time is roses are red, violets are blue, Tony Hawk's Pro Skateboarder 2. It's just made me giggle like a child. Next up, we've got our WCW World Tag Team title match as Berly Bill with The Bodyguard take on the Filthy Animals, Kidman and Conan, with a small army of people with them. Kidman begins this segment by asking Curly Bill if he's the sheriff from Blazing Saddles, which is a joke that went down like a fart in church. Absolutely no one either heard or got this.
Yep.
I will say, by the way, the return of the awful crowd sweetening was on this show.
It was, actually, yeah.
It seems to be that they needed to be a taped show to put it in. Mm-hmm. That on the first Thursday show, their production isn't sophisticated enough to pipe it in on a live broadcast. So we'll get a break from this every 2 weeks until they figure it out.
Which is probably never known, this fucking company.
Yeah. Hopefully. So Berlin all over Kidman to start. He fires up a little, tags to Conan, takes control. It's all very basic. Like, a lot of matches are now going to be on TV. I will say that it's hard to tell with the sweetening, but it seems just by looking at the crowd, which is what we actually have to do now to see if anyone's over, is visually look at the crowd if they're reacting. The animals seem to be more over than most of the acts we've seen on the show the last week or two.
How much of that is just Tori, though?
Well, here's the thing. Like, even when they switch her out for Tigress, that I remember through 2000, like, the Filthy Animals are consistently one of the more. They're mid-carders, mid-carders for sure, but they are over as fuck.
Yeah, that's fair.
People love them. Like, people do the whole Conan promo with them. You know, even when like he adds the, come and feel, that's enough. with Tigress, like, that's, everybody is doing that. So they do remain quite over. Sorry, I just, oh god, it's gauche to make yourself laugh with a note, but I'd forgotten I wrote this. Curly gets tagged in, comes in like a house of shite.
Yeah, I was trying to think of a way to describe this tag, like this burst of offense.
Yeah. It's an explosive burst, much like diarrhea.
And I think to call it a burst would be very generous.
Charitable. That's what I was sitting there with my blank notes going, what is the opposite of a house of fire? And then eventually just settled on house of shite.
It's, when somebody, you'd see in like a teen movie where they get like a brown lunch bag and put dog shit in it and fucking stamp on it on somebody's fucking front door, or possibly set it on fire. That's a Curly Bill hot tag. Yeah,
that's a hot bag, hot tag. 100%.
Hot bag.
Yeah. Okay, maybe that's what we call it now. When a shite wrestler does a hot tag, we'll call it a hot bag.
That's it. We have it.
Let's get it going. We have it. Nailed it. Workshop that one. Well done, buddy. That's teamwork. Yeah. So, yeah, he comes in like a house of shite and then immediately tries to tag back out. Berlin bails on him. The bodyguard hits the loaded punch. Has it been specified what he's loading his fist with?
I think
because he's already got.
He's loading his fist with his fist.
Because he's definitely putting something in. Like last week for sure, I saw him put something in his fist. Whether it was like I don't know, roll of quarters or a fucking like a slapjack. Something is he's holding when he does it.
Yeah, he's holding his fist.
He's holding his fist. Maybe that's what he's holding, a brick, and that's how like, he's the wall, brother. Anyway, it turns into a sky high tequila sunrise for the win. Gene backstage with Lash LaRue. I will say, of the bad Lash LaRue promos, of which there has been many, this was maybe the least bad, but that is not a very high bar.
I still have no idea what this man is saying.
Gene asked him about the unusual show of respect shown by Disco after Lash beat him, and him making the save for Lash when he was getting beat down. He says, respect is one thing, but I don't trust Disco. As long as he has my Cruiserweight title, he will be on the hit list. Then we get Gene with Volkswagen Van Hammer, who says Gene says first that I believe you're the new Prospective Revolution member, and I nearly came out my fucking chair. I was like, yes, the team of shooters, Perry Saturn, Dean Malenko, Shane Douglas, and Van Hammer.
Oh, I just thought of something.
Go on.
You know the way in Lucha there's like the tradition of mini wrestlers. So you'd have mini Octagon or mini Negro Casas or whatever. I'm so disappointed we never got a mini Van Hammer.
Mini Van Hammer. Yes. The Reliant Robin of Van Hammers. See there, now this is why somebody needs to give us the book, mate. People were giving Kevin Nash the book. They're giving Vince Russo the book. No one's ever given us the book.
I just started popping myself that with mini Van Hammer.
Yeah. I feel like one of these days, a very avid listener is going to go and like cut up our shows and like do a super cut of all our stupid fucking booking ideas.
Now, hang on, we had one.
And we're going to have to have a long hard look at
good
ourselves.
booking idea, and nobody has done it yet.
Which one?
The Tournament of Daz.
Oh, the Tournament. Oh, look, the Tournament of Daz is flawless booking. I like everything else has been dog shit.
And I don't believe that Progress's Atlas title is an answer. That's just fucking shy.
No. Does that still exist?
Progress, yeah. Still Nazis.
Yeah. Anyway, Van confirms that he is the man to join the revolution. I do like that he calls Gene Hotline Man. And saying that he and the revolution can help each other. We got Lash LaRue versus Silver King. This is the kind of guy that Lash LaRue should be put in the ring with. I don't know if I want to see it on TV right now. But it is a showcase match for Lash, and it's like a very comfortable pro in Silver King working with him. I love how Silver King does some really cool spots without looking like he's going out a second gear. His twisting cannonball senton, that he looks like he just walks into it.
It's seamless, like it really is.
Yeah.
Like you said it there, like I have in my notes, this is the best Lash has looked. And it just...
Yeah.
Silver King makes his opponent look good, while also not taking away from himself. Like he's the perfect lower card guy. And he's so good, he could be a mid card guy.
In our whole run on this show, I think we've been consistent in that he might be the most underrated guy.
Like everyone loves La Parka and talks about how La Parka should have got more of a push. But like Silver King is like far more consistent.
Yeah, he's just never on TV. Like he'll get booked like this where like we've seen him a couple of times now in a row. And I fully expect he will now disappear for months, and just randomly at some point he will stop getting booked and we'll never see him again. I actually need to look up the last Silver King match and note it in our episode guide, because
that's coming soon, because the cuts start thick and heavy pretty soon.
Well, the cuts have started as we've been reading in the Observer. Yes, you're very right. I imagine he's already one of the guys on a per date deal now. Anyway. Nothing special about the match, but it is the most competent Lash has looked. He wins with the whiplash. Again, the one thing I don't like is that he doesn't have enough of a comeback yet where he has a comeback that lasts more than 2 or 3 moves.
No.
Because, again, he just does the move to set up the whiplash, and then he does the whiplash, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I can't figure out how they don't understand why he's not getting over as a babyface. Because they're not giving him the sympathetic, fiery comeback of a babyface. They're just like, oh, I guess he won. Fair enough. Anyway, Gene with Benoit saying that after the cage match on Monday he can't possibly be 100%. Benoit doesn't answer that and just completely moves on and says that Malenko is now the prey after hunting him for so long. Next up, the Matt Classic that is Van Hammer versus Dean Malenko. I did note of Van Hammer's gear. He has worn it before, but singlet and beanie is a uniquely weirdo combo, before you even add in the fact he's wearing sunglasses.
He's a very uniquely weird kind of guy. That's Van Hammer.
Van cuts a very smarmy promo, basically saying that they can let him in or he can fight his way in, which I'm assuming was the point of him being there, is that he has to fight his way in, but whatever. This is one of the more enjoyable Van Hammer matches I've seen. It's not great by any stretch, but like this whole match is just Dean taking apart his leg like a rabid dog. And I actually thought some of Van's selling of like his leg being blown out was pretty decent by his standard.
I was going to say, I don't know what fucking match you watched, because I just thought this was Malenko fucking just going after his knee and then the Revolution get involved. Like I
think that's why.
Yeah.
I think that's why it was the best Van Hammer match I've seen in ages, is because he didn't get a chance to do anything offensively. He just had to sell like his leg was falling off.
And literally as soon as he gets on offense, we get the interference.
Yeah. I did like the bit where Dean ran into a power slam, but Van's leg completely blew out on his way doing it. Yeah, like I said, he goes for the Cobra Clutch. Malenko flails and elbows Slick in the face, which is funny because we just read about the ref bump thing. Dean goes to check on the ref and distract him while Douglas wraps Van's leg around the post, Texas Cloverleaf, and a win. Then we get a video package that I can only describe as the Powers That Be Are So Cool recap. It's a sizzle reel of how great WCW has been since the Powers That Be came in, which is really funny because half the video package consisted of wrestlers in gimmick giving out about how bad the booking is.
Yes, it's definitely a video that recaps the last 3 weeks.
Yes, it certainly is that. We got something we didn't see in our coverage, which we will see more of, and I know you rolled your eyes, I'm sure. And that is Hacksaw Jim Duggan in his suit begging for a job.
Oh, God, I fucking... Like, I knew it was coming, but I forgot it started, like, this early.
Yeah. And, like, I know people have said it before, but it is so funny that Vince Russo, during this period, because this is when they've started doing the stuff in his office where they're shooting him over the back of his chair. It is so funny how much he's trying to be Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget.
That was my notes.
And it's so funny as well because it's like, who could the Powers That Be possibly be? And it is the most Vince Russo voice on earth. Like, it is unmistakably not any existing member of the roster.
Remember when they said it was the 2 guys from up north?
Yeah. And
now we've got
like,
the New Yorker fucking answering back, and it's ridiculous.
Now we've got, and I know you were loving this, Lee. This is the 8-man Opportunity Knox Battle Royal. That, bear in mind, it was called the Opportunity Knox Battle Royal earlier on and was never called that ever again. This is, wait till you hear this, guys. I know you're going to be rushing out to watch Thunder 87 when you hear this lineup. Chris Adams versus Steven Regal versus Scotty Riggs versus Chavo Guerrero Jr. versus El Dandy versus Dave Taylor versus Prince Ikea, the Flat Pack Sovereign, versus Jerry Flynn. Fuck.
Now, that
is the most, again, thrown together.
I have the order of elimination, and I don't have anything else with regards to this match.
Fuck. Okay, right. I have literally 2 things I've written before elimination start, because I barely wrote anything for this match, because it was dog shit.
Oh, it was awful.
It was so bad. I wrote, Hudson strongly implies, without outright saying, that the 7 wrestlers that don't win will be fired.
Yes.
Now, we know for a fact they're not. Like, I was going to look up, were they fired?
I think they all are.
No, because, well, he might get some time off TV, but Prince Iaukea isn't.
Oh, well, no, he's not.
Because
He becomes the artist, yes.
Yes.
But
Yes, exactly.
I think the other 6 do get released.
I know Chris Adams does around now. I know that Regal's about to go back.
Dandy,
I could look this up. while you're
Dandy
talking.
probably stops getting booked. Riggs goes to ECW by the start of the year. Dave Taylor, I think, goes back to Europe.
I'm not going to be surprised whatsoever. By the way, Scotty Riggs wrestled this year. He's still going. He wrestled 3 matches this year, and those were his first matches since 2009.
Wow.
Actually, sorry. By the way, I should say he was in Battle Riot this year. If you want to know how MLW is going.
Okay, I'm going to run through the order of elimination here. So out first is El Dandy. I don't know who eliminated him. I don't know who eliminated any. I just have literally they're out. So Dandy is out. Then Adams is out. Riggs is out. Jerry Flynn is out. Prince Ikea is out. Then it's down to Dave Taylor, William Regal, and Stephen Regal. And Chavo wins.
Scotty Riggs is around for another month.
Yeah.
He wrestles 2 matches on Saturday night.
There you go. Chavo wins after he eliminates both Regal and Taylor. Dog shit.
Yeah. Other notes I have on this. Jerry Flynn, when he eliminated Scotty Riggs, used the TNA kick to do so. Shout out, Garrett. Jerry Flynn, right? His elimination was kind of a cool spot. Because he gets Ikea in the corner, and he fucking stiffs him 2 or 3 times, and then goes for a roundhouse kick that I swear to God, if Ikea hadn't moved, his head would have landed in the 6th row. Like, you need to see how hard and swift, like, I don't know what fucking Ikea said to him backstage, but fuck me, he was going for blood. I liked that the smooth movement of he misses the roundhouse kick, crotches himself on the ropes, and gets kicked out. Like, that was one movement, and as far as Jerry Flynn's ability goes, that was a pretty good spot.
Maybe
and then, Chavo makes the Brits look like fucking idiots as well.
Maybe Jerry Flynn had heard about the upcoming Rings tournament.
Perhaps.
And
fancied himself.
And was making a play.
Yeah, who knows? I'm going to just check if this is Prince Ikea, because Prince Ikea is the one where I'm just like, I know he remains employed. So I'm just going to double check and see if he disappears from TV at all.
He definitely disappears for a time. Because
he's on Thunder in 2 weeks.
Okay. I didn't mean from this time. I do know he disappears for a time. He doesn't just turn up one.
No. Oh, really?
Oh, really? He just turns up 1 week as the artist.
He's just, I'm seeing January, February, March, he's wrestling on TV.
Oh, my God.
March, April, he's wrestling on TV. May, he's wrestling on TV, and he's the artist by then.
Fair enough. I'm wrong. Okay.
No, it's okay. You're not wrong. They're wrong. We catch Rick and Sid backstage trying to work a finger poke of doom, and I was like, fuck me. But I did find it kind of funny that they're like, no, we'll totally do that, but like, you take the pin. I thought that was kind of funny. Where I was like, no, we should definitely do that. That will make people annoyed, but like, also, I'm not going to lose.
Yeah, that doesn't work for me, brother.
Yeah, there's a lot of that's not going to work for me, brother, going on. Tag team match, main event. Parents Saturn and Sid Vicious versus Chris Benoit and Rick Steiner. Sid immediately murders Rick Steiner and then bails.
I thought it was brilliant because he lets him get the small package, and then he just pops up and goes, "Oh, fuck you, powerbomb."
There's 3 categories of character in WCW: babyface, heel, and Sid. Sid just fucking does whatever, and I love it. And no better man to dump on his fucking head than Rick Steiner. Fuck him. I love that they do that, and Saturn and Benoit look at each other like, what the fuck? So they just get in and start stiffing each other, which is great. I wrote Benoit chops like fuck, which I think is a very accurate summation. Like, he hits them like, again, you hit your friends harder than you hit your enemies, and he was fucking whomping on Perry Saturn here. He does the least favorite Benoit spot that doesn't involve heinous crimes is him snotting on people. Yeah. I fucking have always hated the snotting on people thing. And Malenko does it as well. But, like, this is a fucking snot fest. He snots on Saturn. Saturn fires up, that eats shit on a lion salt. Rick is looking up for the tag. Benoit snots on him as well. Rick lays out both men. Crossface on Saturn, but he gets the ropes. Benoit hits the headbutt, and Malenko comes in for the DQ. And then an absolute repeat of the Nitro angle where the animals come in and a mass brawl breaks out. Fucking hoorah. And we're out of time.
Yeah.
The one thing I'm noticing, Lee, before I ask you your thoughts on this match, is that one of the things that's leaking in already, like we were saying that Thunder might be an oasis for a while of the overly scripted segments. But one thing I'm absolutely noticing that's bleeding in is that philosophy of Vince Russo's, where things need to be happening so quickly and so frantically that no one even has a chance for a minute of downtime to change the channel.
Yeah, it's. I think I perfectly described it. It's stuff happening for the sake of stuff happening. Like, we are to believe that this match was going on and Malenko was right there at the entrance, ready to run in, while the filthy animals are standing right across from him, waiting to run in. Like, it's when you put any kind of logical thought into any of this, it just falls apart. Like, it's just so much. Like, this whole show, I know it was booked a week in advance, but it's like they went, let's just do mystery tag partner fucking week without saying anything.
Yeah.
And there's no logical reason to it. Like, the Steiner and Sid thing hasn't been acknowledged on TV for the past 2 weeks.
Nope. And actually, like you're saying about the mystery partner stuff like that, even if they said at the start that was the theme of the show, that would make the show more interesting.
Yeah.
But it was just a thing they were doing because, I don't know.
And the Revolution are looking for a new member, but it's not any of the guys that they're involved with on the show.
No. Nope. Anyway, I suspect I know some of what you're about to say next, but if I were to ask you your overall thoughts on the show and your winners and losers.
It was a dog shit show. Like, overall, it was like, this is the worst show we've had since pre-Halloween Havoc. Like, I don't think anybody came out of the show looking any better. Like, I know that was a running theme for a long while, but, like, there was nothing on this. Like, Silver King and Lash had the best match. Like, Eddie looked shit. Booker didn't.
Eddie looked like checked out, completely checked out.
Booker and Kaz had a nice little match for what it was, but, like, I can't give anybody any credit on the show.
No, nor should you.
No.
I would have been appalled if you did. Anyway, I guess our final bit is to tell you that the finish counter, brought to you by Ludwig Borga, has 9 matches on this show with 2 clean finishes, 1 disqualification, 5 interference leading directly to a finish, and 1 non-finish via Norman Smiley. That was Thunder episode 87. Thanks for sticking through it with us, folks. We'll be back in 2 weeks with your next episode of Thunder. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you very soon. Thanks everyone for listening to another episode of Days of Thunder. Days of Thunder was produced by Lee Malone and edited by me, Dave Ryan. To keep up to date with the show and find all the ways to listen to us, you can follow us on Twitter at WCW Thunderpod, or click the Linktree link in our Twitter bio or in the show notes. I am at the Day to Dave on Twitter, and Lee is at Malone_713. Days of Thunder is a part of the Voices of Wrestling podcast network. Follow the VOW network anywhere good podcasts are sold for more fine podcasts than you can shake a stick at. Thanks.
Hey everybody, my name is Jesse Collins, and I want to tell you all about my show, the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. On the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, we do a thorough analysis on the biggest issues and trends within the pro wrestling industry. We talk a lot about pro wrestling media, we talk a lot about fan culture and wrestling's place within general pop culture, and we talk about the broader influences that are shaping the way we discuss and analyze the pro wrestling industry. We've had some of the brightest minds in the pro wrestling intelligentsia on the show, including WrestleNomics host Brandon Thurston, both Rich Craich and Joe Lanza from the Flagship Wrestling Podcast, Trevor Dame from the Through the Years podcast, and a whole lot more. This isn't a show for hot takes. It's not a show recapping the latest episode of television. This is a show focusing on the biggest topics in pro wrestling and doing a deep dive on the real stories behind the surface level analysis you might find elsewhere. The Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts, and we'd really appreciate it if you gave us a try. Thanks.